Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video. So, this video was inspired by the whole everybody's reacting to the new Warriors, but this isn't about the new Warriors. But the funny thing is that since I'm watching other people's reactions and seeing where opinions are similar and opinions are different, naturally as people are reacting, I end up, whether intentionally or unintentionally, watching the trailer video featuring Mr. Kibblesmith again. And something that he says in the beginning of the video caught my attention, and unfortunately, I did not address it in my video response to it, which is that in the beginning of the Marvel video, he talks about the New Warriors comic from the 1990s. And he talks about how the characters looked. And he talks about how Nova was very muscular. It was 1990s. Everybody was muscular. That was the art style then. The art style of the 80s and the 90s. I would say up until probably most of the 1990s. The art style was very hyper-muscular. You can even look at games like, say, Street Fighter, right? You look at the art style in Street Fighter 2 and you look at the art style like Street Fighter Alpha. It's totally different in only like 3 years. That was just the art then. You look at cartoons from that time period like the X-Men cartoon, you'll see it was just hyper muscular. That was just it. But he talks about how when he was a kid, I guess, looking at these comic books in the comic shop, how he says that he was intimidated by them. He was intimidated by how muscular Nova was, and how Night Thrasher apparently had... I'm not too familiar with Night Thrasher as a character, but how Night Thrasher had like a blade coming out of his arm or something, right? Stuff that was very cool and popular in the mid-1990s or the early 1990s. Everything was, buff and kind of imposing and intimidating looking. You look at characters from that time period like Domino, Cable, Spawn, right? Wolverine, although he had been introduced like 20 years earlier, but he probably came to prominence as a character the most during the 1990s. That sort of character design was just seen as cool and desirable at the time. You look at Venom and stuff like that. So what it got me thinking was that he was saying essentially that the art design, the art style turned him off because it intimidated him as a kid. And he says himself in the video that he felt that the comic or the characters in the comic were too cool for him. Now, this led me to ask the question to myself of, I'm trying to figure out how to word it, but is it wrong for a character to be scary or imposing or intimidating or basically strong, right? What makes the New Warriors of 1990s stand out is that everybody in 1990s comics looked strong and imposing and powerful. That was just the art style then. And if you look at these new Warriors, as I described in the video and as links will show, right? These characters, none of them, not even the big burly jock, Safe Space, are overtly muscular. One, Trailblazer, is outright, very much overweight. But none of them look, at least in my opinion, strong, right? Like what is it? Screen Time is very skinny. Safe Space and Snowflake have, I guess, what you would call athletic builds, but excuse me, they're not exactly like overtly muscular. And if you've ever followed sports of any kind, you'll know that people who are dedicated to sports, right, who are professional athletes or Olympic athletes, are like crazy fit, crazy muscular, right? But that also means that in most instances that makes them look very strong. And for example, if you look at like strength athletes, right? Power builders, bodybuilders, power lifters, right? They're usually very big and very thick and very physically strong. So what I realized, at least in my opinion, I'm not in the guy's mind, but it seems to me that what he found scary about their design for the times was that they were strong looking, right? They were powerful looking. And that intimidated him. So it seems like now, him and the artist on the book, Luciano Vecchio, right, are now sort of responding to that feeling of being intimidated by characters who look physically strong and imposing by creating characters who don't look physically strong and imposing. At least this is the way I understand it. Okay, so I have to backtrack a minute. Obviously, at this point, I wouldn't say I lied, but obviously I now am responding to the comic. That wasn't my original intent, but too late now. But anyway, it seems to me that this is their response, right? To continue to try to subvert things by showing, hey, you don't need to have the heroic muscular build, right, to be a superhero or to look like a superhero, right? So it just highlighted to me, one, something that Stan Lee said in a book from like the late 70s. It's called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And there's a chapter, I think it's chapter 4, where he talks about figure drawing. And he talks about size and scale, right? And he mentions in the book about how comic book characters, be they heroes or villains, need to look larger than life, right? Need to look larger than life, right? For example, he mentions how if you draw a regular person, right, a regular fit human, right, that they'll be about 6.5 heads tall, but that for a superhero, right, for example, Captain America, you draw him at like 8.5 heads tall because he needs to be bigger, right? He needs to basically be exaggerated, right? He has to have bigger shoulders. He needs to be more muscular. He needs to be everything that a person is, but that much better, right? That much more grand. And yes, that much more powerful. There is a psychology to all this, right? For people who are not intimidated by strength or by powerful figures, seeing someone who is big and strong and healthy, or at least on their face they're healthy, whether or not they're actually healthy, is a question for another day. But like visually, we see fit, strong, capable. And that's what heroes are supposed to look like, generally speaking, because they're supposed to represent and emulate and display the best in human nature tenfold, right? So their physical appearance is sort of influenced by and a reflection of what they're meant to represent as characters. So it just kind of hit me. I just found it interesting how what he found intimidating when it came to the art, I found, especially as a little kid, very encouraging and comforting. I've said in several videos that I'm a big fan of characters like Batman, like She-Hulk, back in the day, like Wolverine, and many other characters, but those three in particular. And the one thing you'll notice is that they were always physically powerful, well-built people, right? Batman's, big and burly, right? Wolverine basically has the body of like a very muscular power lifter, and then of course She-Hulk, right, looked like an 80s Miss Olympia bodybuilder back in the day. But they all, be it through their personality and through their appearance, exuded strength. And yes, strength can be intimidating, right? For example, people who are first responders or they're law enforcement or they're military, they need to be fit, right? Because they need to have the physical strength to deal with a situation, right? Not every criminal is going to submit and come quietly. You need to be physically fit and strong to deal with the very risky things that a police officer, a soldier, and those types are called to do. Like, for example, right, you can't be out of shape and think that you can effectively rescue people from a fire if you're a firefighter, right? Because you have to run into a fire, run into a dangerous situation, right? With like 50 pounds of gear on, you need to be able to find this person, right? You need to have the physical strength to move upstairs, to move stuff, drag all this stuff, literally carry that weight, as they would say in Cowboy Bebop, and to go rescue a person, save their life, right? You need to have physical strength for this. You honestly do need to be powerfully built if you're going to have a job that involves saving lives, and at times, sadly, especially when it comes to law enforcement and it comes to military matters, at times involves taking lives. So when I look at it that way, I just find it interesting how something that I found comforting as a child, and even comforting as an adult, even though I myself am not a reflection of that. I need to get on that, but cheeseburgers are addictive. But something I found comforting in the art, this physical display of strength, right? He actually found intimidating. And now he's sort of responding to his fear by creating these characters who don't look big and strong and scary and intimidating. It in an odd way kind of reminds me of Victor Cartwright, who's like the head guy, or at least he's the guy that they're sort of throwing to the wolves when it comes to the Thundercats reboot. And the reason why I say this reminds me of him is because Victor Cartwright, in the video that came out when they first announced this in like 2018, he says that he wasn't a fan of Thundercats, right? His brothers were. His brothers were, but he was not. And many people, myself included, feel that this version of Thundercats is basically Cartwright's his own personal sort of revenge tale against his brothers, right? His brothers teased him when they were kids because they were kids. And so he's taking something that his brothers loved and he's ruining it. And I think it's something similar here. I'm not going to say ruin because these are all original characters. I just hope that he worked out the creator rights issues with Marvel. I don't see these characters going anywhere, but if they do, if they somehow become popular, you might want to be thinking about royalties. But anyway, right? I sense something similar in this with Kibblesmith and Vecchio, in that they took something that intimidated them, or at least I should say Kibblesmith said intimidated him. We don't know about Vecchio, but Kibblesmith said that the art style of the comic, more or less, right, intimidated him because the characters were muscular and they had weapons and all the other stuff. So what does he do? He creates characters who don't look powerful or imposing in the least. Right? No weapons on display, no sign of muscles with the exception of perhaps Snowflake and Safe Space. But that's it. And to be honest, that's just kind of sad, in my opinion, to be intimidated by power, or rather be intimidated by a powerful body or powerful display. Because that power, especially in a comic book, could one day save your life, right? Because that's what superheroes do. They save people, right? The very power, right, he fears, right? For example, what's his name? Night Thrasher's blade or his nightstick or whatever it is, right? That may look scary, right, to, what's his face? Might look scary to Mr. Kibblesmith, but, put yourself in the position of, the frightened, innocent bystander who's being attacked by a thug who's overpowering them. Then you have a character like Night Thrasher, or a character like Batman or whatever, swoop in and now become the protector of the weak and the innocent, and now the object of fear to the criminal, right? That in its own way is empowering, because now it causes the criminal to fear. So I think that being powerful and a little bit scary and imposing isn't always a bad thing. It just depends on how you use it and who you use it on. But anyway, that's the video. Sort of just my rambly thoughts, and let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good night or day. Bye.